Okay guys, here we go. This is your first set of physics notes. These notes belong on page 2A in your journal. We set that up in class already. If for some reason you are watching this video and you have not set your journal up yet, I am going to ask you to stop this video, go back to day 1, and follow the instructions that you see there on how to set up your journal. Then you can come on back here and take your notes. So a lot of students will ask, why do we use a metric system? Why can't we just use inches and feet like we do everywhere else? Well, the first thing is because we're in a science class, and scientists all over the world use the metric system on a regular basis so that data can be shared without having to convert between one system to another. Most countries around the world use the metric system, so scientists use metric. The second and really more important for you reason why we use metric units is because conversions are so much easier than using the English or the standard units that you guys are used to. So I'm going to show you a really quick example here. Watch this. Let's say I have the problem, convert 5 miles into inches. First thing you have to figure out is what are called your conversion factors. So you have 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. Nice round number there. And then you also know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. Now you have to do something with that information. And you can take your given 5 miles and you can say each one of those 5 miles has 5,280 feet, so we multiply those. And each one of those feet then has 12 inches, so we multiply that. Pull out your calculator, punch all those numbers in, and you end up with 316,800 inches. Not anywhere near the 5 miles that you started with. You had all these random numbers that you were working with. That 5 you started with is nowhere to be seen, so it gets a little bit confusing. Now let's talk a little about the metric system, and you'll see why it's so much easier. Let's say I give you a problem like convert 5 kilometers into millimeters. Now the metric system is what's called a base 10 system. That means everything is based off of powers of 10, multiplying by multiples of 10, dividing by multiples of 10. And then what that means is if you use what's called the ladder method, you don't even need a calculator. You just have to look at your little chart, your little stair-step ladder chart, and move a decimal point. So if you have a unit that starts, say, up here. Here's your base unit. And let's say you're starting with something bigger than your base unit. If you're converting into something smaller than that, you move your decimal to the right. If you are moving to something larger than what you start with, you move your decimal to the left. Okay, just like going up a ladder, you move to the left, going down the ladder, move to the right. Now let's put some real prefixes in there. Base unit in the middle. And we'll talk about our base units in a second. Notice above where it says base unit, it says 10 to the 0 power. Hopefully you remember from math class, something to the 0 power is 1. Okay? So 10 to the 0 power is 1 of something. Just above that, 10 to the 1 is deca, 10 units, 10 of whatever you have. Above that, hecto is 100 of whatever it is. Above that, kilo, 10 to the 3rd. And I know that the chart in your journal goes a little bit farther to the left and right, and we'll look at that in just a minute. But right now we're going to focus here. If you go smaller than a base unit, deci, 10 to the negative 1, is 0.1 or a tenth. Okay, divide by 10 for your amount. Centi, 10 to the negative 2 is 1/100th or 0.01. And then down to milli, 10 to the negative third, 1/1000th. So divide by 1,000. Let's go back to our problem that I gave you. Convert 5 kilometers into millimeters. All you have to do here is count. Okay, we're starting with 5 kilometers. So you start right here at kilo. And we know that we're going all the way down here to milli. So we know already that we're going to be moving our decimal point this direction. We can say 5 or 5.0 means the same thing, okay, in terms of the amount. But how far do we move our decimal place? Here's where you just count steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 steps down the ladder. So we move our decimal place 6 places to the right. And I'm going to rewrite this over here. Okay, so we jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places. Here's our new decimal point. And all of these spaces that you skipped, we fill in with zeros. So what you end up with is, put our commas in, 5 million millimeters. 5 kilometers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. All we did was take that decimal point from here, move it 6 places that way, fill in our zeros, and we get a 5 followed by 6 zeros, or 5 million millimeters. We didn't need a calculator. No multiplying of anything, no plugging in numbers anywhere, just counting spaces and moving a decimal place. Now, before you move on, I do want you to try some practice problems. And I'm going to ask you to pause the video while you try the practice ones. Go on and write your givens in your journal, and then write your answers afterward. Try to figure out all the answers before you move on. I'm going to give you the answers, but I want you to try it and make sure you can understand. The first one that we're going to do is convert 155 centimeters into meters. Starting with centimeters, you're going up to meters, which is your base unit. So you're going up, which means you're going to move your decimal to the left. Okay, remember you have an assumed decimal at the end of that number, 155 point. You're going to move your decimal 1, 2 spaces. That's it. 1, 2. So 155 centimeters becomes 1.55 meters. Okay? I'm not going to walk you through the rest of them, but I am going to give you the answers. If you have questions about how I arrived at any of the answers, just make sure and ask before you move on so that you understand exactly what's going on. Our next problem, 25 kilometers, 2 millimeters. We're starting at kilometers and going 2 millimeters. When you do that, you move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces to the right. So we add those 6 zeros and we get 25 million millimeters. Next problem, convert 2 centimeters into kilometers or kilometers. Centimeters to kilometers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Move your decimal to the left, okay, which means it moves this way. Fill in all your zeros, and you get 0.00002 kilometers. Next problem, 4,750 milliliters is equal to 4.750 liters. 3.4 liters is equal to 34 deciliters. And you get that D, okay, the small dl, that comes from your chart, okay? The abbreviation that we use for deci is a D. The next problem, 256 grams into, now this says DKG. On your chart, I believe it gives the correct abbreviation as DA for deca. Both actually are correct. Both are pretty common usage. So you could say DK or you could see DA. You're going from grams to decagrams on the next problem. And for that, you just divide by 10, or you move your decimal place one place to the left, and you get 25.6 decagrams. Last problem, 45 hectograms into grams. Okay, you're starting with hectograms. You're moving down to your base unit, which is grams, so we're going to move our decimal to the right. 2 spaces gives you 4,500 grams. Again, make sure that these are written in your notes so that you have a reference point. And if you don't understand how I arrived at a particular answer, be sure to ask before you try and move on. Oh, and you can see here that I've corrected that decagrams. Now this is the chart that you have in your journal. There's just a couple of things that I want to point out before you move on and go on to your next activity. Notice that you start with the base unit here in the middle, and as you go down it goes to -1, -2, -3, but then the next number that's given is actually a -6. So what you have to understand is that there's a 4 and a 5 in between there. They just don't have names. So when you're converting, say, from a base unit to micro, you're going to move your decimal all 6 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for those hidden ones, and 6. Same thing in between micro and nano. You have to remember that there's 2 kind of hidden steps in between. So to 7, 8, and then to the 9. In between here, a 10, 11, little hidden steps in between. Same thing is true as you're going up. It goes to the 1, to the 2, to the 3, and then you have these little hidden 4, 5 steps before you get to mega. And then a hidden 7, 8 before giga, and a little hidden 10, 11 before you get to tera. Okay, we won't use those terribly often, but it is important that you can read the chart and that you remember about those little hidden steps that we have in between our largest and our smallest numbers. That's it for your metric system review notes. Make sure you have a good understanding before you try and move on. But once you have finished, you can go and log on to Canvas and take your metric quiz and be finished with this particular activity. Good luck!